And Buzz joins us now. Buzz, when you started the profile here, what were you looking to bring out with Nick Foles?
Well, what I was really looking to bring out was Nick Foles. And in a profile like this, and I've done almost hundreds of them involving athletes such as LeBron James and Albert Pujols, I wanted to get to Nick. And I didn't want to get to Nick, after a practice. I wanted to get to Nick to spend a few days with him to really get to know him, because we don't know him at all in Philadelphia. He's had an amazing season last year. He's the new face of Philadelphia sports. That was the goal. But he said no, and it wasn't for lack of trying. And when he said no, you got two choices. Do you stop the profile, or do you do it with what you have available? And I'm a journalist, and I felt I got to go with what's available, and went down to Texas because that's where he's from. That's where the nub of his life is, and talked to a lot of teammates and coaches and people who knew him to create this profile. There is a definite absence of his voice, but he can't complain about that. He said, I really don't know who he is, and that's probably true because he wouldn't talk to me, and I thought it would be fun. I thought we'd have a good time together. But if you don't talk, you don't talk, and then you got to use other legitimate devices.
But would you have written it differently if he had spoken to you?
Well, I might have written it differently because I might have seen things that I haven't seen, when he's on camera. I looked at a lot of interviews with him. I've read a lot of articles with him, and in all these articles, there's this kind of a gee golly Willikers attitude. He's kind of over the top and gushing, and I stand by the piece. I think virtually all great athletes, one way or another, have arrogance, and arrogance can be translated a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be being a jerk and wearing your ego on your sleeve. It can be a certain kind of gravitas that Russell Wilson has or Drew Brees has. And Nick may develop that, but, I don't see it. And as I said in the piece, I thought he was really chicken-ass not to do this, to hide behind, there's no I in team. Nick, it's a little late for that. It's a little late for that. I mean, you had one of the most amazing years ever last year in your second full year in the league, and you're the quarterback. You're the man, and people are going to want to know about you. So the short answer is, Dan, I don't know. But that's why you try to talk to people. I was certainly open-minded, and he didn't want to do it.
It just felt like it was a little heavier-handed because he didn't comply with you.
Well, you know what? Honestly, it may have been heavier-handed because I was pissed. I was pissed because and I probably have said this too many times in my life. I mean, Philadelphia Magazine chose me. It wasn't out of the blue. Nick and I share something in common, and that is Friday Night Lights. I wrote the book. He once said the research for the film Friday Night Lights was done at Westlake High School, where he went to school, Austin Westlake. He once said he was a character out of Friday Night Lights. It's a beloved film. They shot at Westlake. So there was a common denominator. Mm-hmm. So was I stunned when he said no and the Eagles said no? I was absolutely stunned. And did I wear it on my sleeve? Yeah, probably. But I also think that I don't know how hungry Nick is. I don't know how hungry he is because of his background. Backgrounds make a difference, and to his great credit, his father is a hard charger and sold a chain of restaurants for $60 million. Nick grew up in one of the most insulated pockets of the country. Westlake is a great school, but he played on a team his senior year that had no African-American athletes. He leads by example, and leading by example is great, but that often means that you're really not a leader. And, is he going to be a leader when he's trying to win a game in the fourth quarter? These are all legitimate questions. The biggest thing I found out in the profile is people like him a hell of a lot more than they like me. That I did find out. I mean, he is beloved. People are really rooting him in Philadelphia, and so am I. And frankly, I know he responded to the piece, and I liked what he said, except for the fact, well, he didn't really get to know me. Well, Nick, it wasn't for lack of trying, but I can only do what I can do.
But the last three Super Bowl winners: Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, Eli Manning. I mean, not. Boring and guarded.
Well, but boring. I mean, Russell Wilson to me has a certain maturity and gravitas that Nick does not. Eli might be boring, but Eli is, and maybe this will happen to Nick. Eli has come out of his shell. He actually kind of has a folksy sense of humor. Flacco is a little bit goofy, but, no offense to Flacco. I don't want to be compared to Flacco because that was a fluke. All these guys, one way or another, are have come out of their shell, and this idea that the piece was a slam job is ridiculous. 95% of it was very positive, but this is the next step for Nick, I think, and it could come with maturity to be a little bit more assertive, not be afraid to talk about himself. And if he gets there, that's great, because I think you need that to truly win. And if he doesn't get there, they may win anyway, because they're loaded with their offense could be one for the ages this year. But I think legitimately, that is what's lacking, and that was, borne out by what people said. He is a very selfless individual, which is admirable. He's very religious, which is admirable, as long as you don't try to shove it down people's throats. He does work, tirelessly, but he's a quiet guy. And, in high school, I said, did he ever yell? Did he ever scream? Did he ever get in your face? And the answer was no. The thing that he's best at, he has always, in his entire career, defied expectations.
Yeah.
Expectations for Nick have generally been, at the beginning, very low. They were fairly high in high school. He did not get recruited by really any, by nobody in Texas, by very few major schools. He went to Michigan State. That was a disaster. They recruited the quarterback at the end of the season. He left Michigan State. He went to Arizona. He lost the starting job. But, the kid bounces back. And I think that's great. But, the problem with when you don't have expectations on you, that's great, because no one expects anything of you. But, he's reached a point in his career where people have high expectations for him, and that's where it's interesting to see how he will do. He's never, there are a lot of reasons for it, but he has not won a big game in his career. 2 bowl games were a disaster. The Saints' loss wasn't his, but he did not win, and he didn't even win a state championship, despite being ahead at halftime. So these are the questions, and I think he's also got to come out of that shell of, I'm going to hide behind, the whatever, what's the cliche, Dan? I in team, E in team, A in team. I forget what the hell it is.
There's no I in team.
But it wasn't. Yeah, I was shocked when he didn't participate, and I think that's part of the maturation process.
But do you look at Manziel's character traits and think that matches up better for success as a leader than Nick Foles?
Manziel as we all know, is a wild card. But I think, and Manziel has excesses. There's no question about it. But I also think that guy has won games and has had a career that no one ever thought he would have, because it is a kind of arrogance. No one can stop me. I can do what I want. And, when you have that type of attitude, you're going to have excesses, but I think that is what propelled him. And I think when you have that, and it's got to be toned out a little bit, but, Joe Namath had it, Montana had it in a certain way, and just supreme confidence. Players are going to rally around you, and I think, in crunch time, they're going to say, all right, this guy's going to lead us, and this guy's going to do it. Do I think Nick has that now? No. Can he develop it? Sure.
Would you rather have Manziel or Nick Foles?
Well, right now, honestly, I'd rather have Foles, because Foles has proved himself in the NFL. If they were both coming out of college, I'd rather have Manziel. If they were both coming out of college, I'd rather have Manziel. Frankly, it's more exciting. As you know, it's much better for the media, because you know what the hell he'll do. I love Manziel. Shady McCoy said the same thing and then shut up. He said he wished the Eagles had drafted Manziel. Manziel may flame out. He may be terrible, but he may be the next Joe Namath, and I like the edge that he has.
Well, there's your next profile.
Yeah, but he better, unlike Foles, he better do something. Foles is, look, Dan, the problem was, as I write about a guy who had the best second year in the history of the NFL, but I think is he a good person? Yes. Is he selfless? Yes. Is he tireless? Yes, but the key issue for me, and it's intangible. You know that better than anyone. You've been covering this game for a long time. It's that intangible factor of leadership when it counts, and I don't see that yet. And I think Eli Manning's a perfect example. He didn't have it either, but he grew into it, and it may come with time. It may come with time, as Nick says. I haven't been in the league very long, and that's true. But welcome to the NFL, kid.
Yeah, keep stirring it up, Buzz.
Exactly.
Thank you, bud.
All right, thank you.
All right, Buzz Bissinger, sports writer.